Hey! 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 I don't know. I never thought I'd get this far.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Hello, everybody. Welcome to actually a brand new episode of a new series I was thinking of called Tier List Thursday, where on Thursdays, I would just do a little video, maybe doing a tier list of sorts. And I was like thinking to myself, what kind of tier list could I start off with? And just a disclaimer before I even get into that. It's there's no script. So if I stutter at any point or if I kind of lose a train of thought, I'm not gonna edit this. So, just I would just say you're gonna have to take it as it is, and I apologize. Just a little bit of disclaimer. But yes, judging from the title, we will be doing a tier list of the Spider-Man films and the Sonyverse stuff because I was like, you know what? I'm kind of in the mood to do a tier list today. I didn't want to do a stream. So you know what? Why not just make a video of sorts? I mean, that sounds great. I would say. I mean, I know this start is pretty awkward and I'm rambling, but I just like Spider-Man. I like doing tier lists and I was bored. So I was like, you know what? Let's do a tier list today. And this is the start of a new series, and some videos could be longer than others, some could be shorter. I mean, who knows? We'll figure it out, I think. I hope. But yeah, let's get right into it. I mean, it's gonna be kind of like a review of sorts. Um, but so here are the categories of the tier list. We have amazing, which is the best of the best. We have good, meaning like they're good, but they're not like amazing, like best of the best. Average, meaning like they're not bad, they're not good. Below average is it's like not trash, but definitely not necessarily something I would rewatch again. And then there's just trash, meaning movies I would never, ever, ever watch ever because it is, well, trash. And they're going to be kind of like small reviews, like, because I've already done like a bunch of reviews on all of these movies. So I'm not going to go into them in depth. I'll give like it's kind of going to be like mini reviews, like for each one. I actually more than likely at the end of this going to do like a little playlist of all like the reviews and such. So you kind of get the idea. I mean, if you don't, then I have no hope for you. Just kidding. I love you guys, but not that much though. Like, guys, calm down. But yeah, let's begin with obviously we're gonna go in chronological order with Spider-Man 2002. Now, what do I think about Spider-Man 2002? Well, it is actually one of the first superhero movies I watched, besides for Batman 1989 and Daredevil. I actually own this movie on VHS, so that's how far back I went because I was a poor kid. I couldn't afford DVDs. We had VHS. But no, it's like one of the first superhero movies I watched, and I still thoroughly enjoy it today. I actually own it now on Blu-ray because I like it so much. Because it came in like the little like special box set of like the Tobey Maguire, Sam Raimi Spider-Man trilogy, which also includes the editor's cut. But no, this movie I remember really liking, and I still thoroughly enjoy. But I have problems with it, which I guess I could just start off with the problems with it. I think that it is kind of cheesy, and I do think some of it is dated, but it's not necessarily dated in the sense of like it's aged poorly. Like no, I think it's like one of those movies I could go back and chuckle at because it's cheesy, but I think it works with Spider-Man. So I could forgive it for that. I'm not the Green Goblin doesn't really make sense in terms of a motive. I think the performance from Willem Dafoe is great, but the Green Goblin himself just doesn't really work. Um, but really, just it's just dated. But I think a lot of it is really saved because it feels like a Spider-Man movie, and I don't really have major problems with it other than those things. But those you could really call maybe nitpicks in a sense where it's not really like major problems, but there are problems that are sort of noticeable. And I also actually here's another problem. I don't like Kirsten Dunst Mary Jane. I'll be honest with you, I really don't. I found her to be kind of annoying, and she's not necessarily the best like female protagonist. Like I prefer Gwen in the Amazing Spider-Man movies. When I get to that, I'll talk about that. But I really like Kirsten Dunst that much. I think Toby's performance was okay. At least I like the Peter Parker aspect, but the Spider-Man like felt But the action was cool. The story of his origin was greatly adapted, and I just think it was a good start to the trilogy. I would say overall, and also the opening credits and the score were great too. I mean, I'll put it in good. I think it's just a good movie. I consider it more of a popcorn movie at best, but like it's not like amazing, but it's good. It's definitely a good start. And it's definitely a great start when it comes to the live action Spider-Man films because it's the first one. So like I said, it's a great start. Next up is Spider-Man 2. I mean, I'm just gonna put it amazing right out of the gate. I mean, it's a really good movie. I mean, there's like no negatives. Like it's mainly nitpicks, but I'm not even gonna talk about those. Like this movie is so good. Doc Ock is a great villain, and I love Peter's personal struggle throughout the film, like which results in losing his powers. The emotional scenes are great. The action is amazing, especially the train sequence. Like everything in this movie just like clicks, you know? Like this movie actually feels like a really good Spider-Man film. And I like those types of stories where actually has it's more personal, and I liked just the overall like Peter like losing his jobs. Like you see his personal life. Like I like superhero films like that because I want to see how they are when they're not behind the mask. And I think it's a great just Spider-Man story. And the acting, this is probably one of the best acted Spider-Man films because of the script is so good. Everybody does a great job. I mean, Kirsten Dunst can get a little annoying, but it works. Like everything in this movie just works so well that honestly, I have no complaints about it. It's an amazing movie. If you have not watched it yet, go and do so because it's really good. All right, next is Spider-Man 3. Now, I understand there are fans of this movie, and if you like this movie, I kind of understand. But for me, at least, this movie was not good. I mean, I would even say it's trash, and I'm gonna explain why. I think the biggest problem with Spider-Man 3 is that there's so much going on, and I just don't think it balances it well. Like the symbiote to me was poorly done. I think Peter was an asshole in the movie. Especially in the first act, he was like a complete asshole where it felt like the arc in Spider-Man 2 felt null and void because he was like being cocky. He was even kind of arrogant too. Like he really wasn't Peter Parker. Like he kind of just came out like a douche. And then of course when he gets the symbiote, he acts more douchey. And then the breakup scene on the bridge was horrible. Harry's amnesia was bad. I hated Gwen Stacy and Captain Stacy. Venom was a joke. Like there was really nothing in this movie that was redeemable besides a couple things. The first thing that I liked was Sandman. I think Sandman as a whole, I liked Sandman in the movie. I think Sandman was the only thing really good thing about it. And the other really good thing was the action. Even though it's not as good as Spider-Man 2's action, I appreciate the action for what it was. Now, but those things don't really save the film from just being an absolute dumpster fire. And even just like everything with Venom, like I said before, was horribly done. Topher Grace was miscast. I actually think this is one of the worst acted Spider-Man films because the script is so bad. It's just so noticeable. Like the acting is just wow, it was not good. Like a lot of it was just bad. I just don't really know how to say it. It's like, and also like and I thoroughly believe that Sam Raimi like intentionally sabotaged this movie and wanted it to fail because he didn't want to do Venom. But that's just a conspiracy theory on my part. But it was just not a good movie. I do not recommend it. I would just say after Spider-Man 2, just not watch it because it's just not worth the watch unless you're a Raimi Spider-Man fan. But even then, you might like it, but for me, at least, I just did not care for it. Next up is The Amazing Spider-Man, which right out of the gate, I'm going to put it at good. Now, The Amazing Spider-Man is actually the first superhero film I watched in a theater. So I have a lot of kind of like a lot of fond memories with this movie. I like Andrew Garfield. I think it's like a nice take on the character. I like that they brought back the web shooters and try to make it more of like a modern take on the character. And the lizard was cool, but one of the big reasons why it's not an amazing is that there were a lot of deleted scenes that should have been in the movie, and that's what really hurt the film because there was a lot of scenes with like Kurt Connors and like him with his son, and like just the stuff with Kurt Connors that was cut out felt like it was needed desperately. And then I think like the guy like Kafka, I believe his name was, who worked with Oscorp, like he kind of gets killed off in a deleted scene, which would have made more sense. So there's a lot of stuff that was cut out that I felt like could have been kept. But the big thing that really saves this movie, and like there's a lot of good stuff, is that I love Peter and Gwen's relationship. I think it works better than the Kirsten Dunst, Tobey Maguire thing because I think Garfield and Stone had a relationship, behind the scenes, which I think that helped the chemistry work very well. But also, Mark Webb is a great romantic director in terms of like making scenes like that work. And I think it worked with this movie. And of course, visuals are great. I thought the suit looked cool for like a modern, like it's definitely not the best looking Spider-Man suit, but it's good for like a modern suit. And Captain Stacy was great too. Dennis Leary was good. I would also say it's probably good because really these two movies are kind of similar in a way because they're both origin stories, and Uncle Ben dies, but I think both films are different in their own ways that they both are equally good. It's just if the scenes that weren't cut out, that was cut out, I would be an amazing, but for me, it would be in good. So, hey, I recommend it if you, it's like, it's like a modern Spider-Man movie. So I'd say give it a watch if you haven't watched it. All right, next up is The Amazing Spider-Man 2. Yikes, this movie is very, very split. Um, well, for one thing, it's better than Spider-Man 3. I will go as far as to say that. Now, is it the best Spider-Man movie? No. And I'm going to explain why. Which I'll kind of go into my positives. I liked again, Peter and Gwen's relationship was good. I think Harry was a good villain. I think the Goblin was cool. I think he just had more build up. Um and also I just like certain things, and the parent thing was cool with Peter's parents. That I think that kind of worked, but at the same time I have a problem with that as well. Um and also like the scene in Times Square with Electro, that was cool. And also the suit that Spider-Man wears in the movie is great. And also the death of Gwen Stacy was an awesome scene. I think that scene was very good. But where did the movie go wrong? Well, I'm going to say this right out of the gate. I think The Amazing Spider-Man 2 kind of suffers from Iron Man 2 syndrome, where I think that if this movie had more movies in that universe, I think it would age better. But the problem is, after this movie, there's like nothing like with uh well, sorry. But there's really like after that, like that universe is done. Like we don't. There's no third Amazing Spider-Man movie. There's no Sinister Six movie, which it was setting up. Like there was no other movies in that universe that really, benefited from this film. And even then, like this movie doesn't really justify its own existence. It's also very over bloated because it's trying to do so much that it ends up kind of forgetting about what it's trying to do. And Electro was not a great villain. I didn't really understand his motive. I thought, and when he became a villain, I thought that was kind of stupid. Rhino should not have been marketed at all. I think Rhino should have just been more like a surprise. That way, I would have been more like, oh, yeah, that was cool. But to me, it's like if you're going to market a villain, actually show the villain. Because and that's the problem with Spider-Man 3, is that with Venom, it's like they didn't really market him. Well, they marketed him, but they tried to market him as like, oh, he's going to be the big villain. But he was not barely in the movie. And Rhino was only in the movie at the end, basically. And technically the beginning, but he wasn't really Rhino. So this movie suffers from bad marketing. I think some of the action wasn't that great. And even like the final action sequence with Electro, and that kind of turned it into a music video, that was just stupid. like I'm sorry, like there's just a lot of problems with the Amazing Spider-Man 2. And Amazing Spider-Man 2's biggest problem is that it focuses so much on setting up other films that it sometimes forgets that it's a Spider-Man movie. But with that being said though, and also like Peter's parents though too, I feel like that you didn't really need all that in the film. Especially like if you were gonna have the Peter's parents subplot in there, then you should have had Peter's dad come in at the end, like in one of the alternate endings. But besides that, I'm gonna put it in average. I just think it's a frustrating movie. It's over bloated, and I really wish we could have gotten more movies in that universe to really justify it. But I would still say give it a watch if you like the first Amazing Spider-Man. But they're both completely different films. So I would say, give it a watch if you like this movie. But otherwise, I'd probably just stick to these first two films. That's just me. Next up, we have Spider-Man: Homecoming. All right, I'm gonna put this in average because this is another example of a film that is very frustrating. And like I said, I'm not gonna go really in depth with these films because again, I already did like reviews of them in like live streams. But the biggest problem with Spider-Man: Homecoming, at least for me, is that it's not really Spider-Man. Like it feels more like a Miles Morales Spider-Man than it does a Peter Parker. And I just like, and don't get me wrong, like the arc is fine. Like I get where they were going with the Iron Man Jr. thing, but then wants to be Spider Man. Like that makes sense, but it's just the way they did it just didn't make sense. And also, Ned Leeds was very annoying. Like there was just a lot of things in this movie that was very frustrating. Like I like that I was in high school, I give it that, and there were some cool visuals. Vulture was a great villain. The action was okay, uh, but it's just an example of they should have just made him Spider-Man instead of this like, oh, like this awkward kid. Like I don't mind like Peter being like this awkward kid, but Peter, it just came off as more Miles Morales. It didn't come off like actual Spider like Peter Parker. In fact, I would just rather a Miles Morales Spider-Man at that point. At least there I'd be like, oh, okay, I see where they're going with it, but it just didn't really work. And honestly, personally, I would rather these three movies over this one. And actually, I would rather watch Amazing Spider-Man 2 because those feel like Spider-Man movies, whereas with Homecoming, it just didn't feel like that. But it's fine for what it is. If you're not a hardcore Spider-Man fan, I'd recommend it. But if you're like a hardcore comic book fan, then I'd just say you're probably not going to like it. So it's just these two are just frustrating. That's why they're an average. So I mean, hey, if you like that, then hey, it's for you. Next up, we have Venom, and I'm also gonna put this in trash, but I'm gonna put this ahead. I'm actually, I'm gonna put this below Spider-Man 3 because this one is just ultra trash. This one is just, it's still trash, but it's not as bad. Like the positive, Tom Hardy is good as Venom. I think that was great casting. Uh, I think the girl who played, I think was it Anne Wang? I think it was. I think if I'm not, or Michelle, was it? Hold on a minute. I'm sorry, guys. Hang on. I just want to make sure that I'm getting her name right because I don't want Michelle Williams. Michelle Williams plays Anne. I think she was very. I thought she was great casting. The casting itself in general is good, and I think Venom's look is better. And I actually will say they do get the Venom story a lot better than Spider-Man 3, but that's not really saying much. I thought the tone was very inconsistent. I thought the lobster scene was absolutely atrocious. Riot was very, very boring. I thought he was a very bland villain. And I just think in general, I just found Venom to be a very confusing film. And also the after credit scene with Woody Harrelson wearing a Ronald McDonald wig. I think that was just bad. But and also showing Venom like basically at the end of the film, like he was like the bulk of the movie was Eddie Brock, and then the last portion of it was Venom, and he was barely in that movie. And it's like, so I was kind of annoyed with that. I didn't like the humor. I thought that kind of came off as cringy. Like just overall, Venom just was not a great film, and I definitely would say if you like Venom, you might get a kick out of it. But for me, at least, I'm not. I like Venom, but to me, that was just poorly done. And I hope Venom 2, Let There Be Carnage is a better movie. All right, next up is Into the Spider-Verse, and I'm going to put this in amazing. I think it's just an example of a fantastic movie, and it was so much better than I thought it was going to be. Because, first of all, it came from Sony Animation, which after the Emoji Movie, I was just not excited at all. At all. Like, it's not a movie that I was just like, oh my god, I am so excited to see. Like, no. But then I saw the movie when it came on Netflix, and oh my god, it is such an amazing movie. The animation is great. The story was absolutely phenomenal. The way they handled Peter's death and bring in Miles, I thought that was great. The Easter eggs were cool. The acting was amazing, especially Nicolas Cage's Spider-Man Noir, because that was so fitting. And like I said, the animation style, like it was like a 3D animation, but it was like it had that weird 2D, 3D animation, but I think it just looked so pleasing to the eye and just the comic book style to it, and also the Easter eggs, going back to the previous Spider-Man movies. I thought that was cool. Like the comparing contrast from like that universe's Peter Parker to Peter B. Parker. I thought that was greatly done. Um, I guess my only real nitpick is that I didn't like the way they handled Tombstone and a couple of the villains, but other than that, this movie is such an amazing movie that honestly, if you have not seen it, do yourself a favor and go and do so because it is such a good movie. Like, just stop what you're doing and watch it like now because it's phenomenal. Like, I would say these two movies aren't amazing because these two movies are like hard to beat in terms of superhero films. So, I mean, just go and watch it, man. It's such a fantastic movie. Go and see it. I can't say that enough because oh man, that's great. But yeah, just go and see it. And last but not least, we have Spider-Man Far From Home. I'm going to put this in below average. And I'm going to explain why. The first problem is that it came after Endgame. And by that point, nothing was going to top Endgame. And it was a very boring movie. Like it had a very slow start. I didn't like the high school stuff. Some of the jokes fell flat again, just like Homecoming. Mysterio was a good villain, and there were some cool little sequences with Mysterio and Peter. But overall, like the movie just felt awkward. And honestly, it's another example of MCU Spider-Man where it I just don't know why, but his solo movies just don't work. I prefer him like in the team up films, but it's just like again, he goes through the same arc like in Homecoming. It just doesn't work. Tom Holland's a good actor, but I just feel like they need to give him better stuff to work with. And that's just what's frustrating is because I know that Tom Holland can do it. It's just a matter of how they execute it, which they just didn't even do right. So, and like the only really cool sequence that I really liked was like the sequence where it was like kind of the hallucination sequence where like, and then like dead Iron Man, came from the grave and like all like Spider-Man's previous costumes you saw, like that was greatly done. And the action was better in Homecoming, I will admit, but the story was weak. I thought the MJ romance just felt weird and awkward. May and Happy's relationship felt awkward and weird. Like all of it just felt awkward. Like besides like some of the action and some of the visuals just and even like some of the sequences, like it just didn't really work. It's just not a great movie. If you're a fan of Tom Holland's Spider-Man, you'll like this movie, but other than that, I don't really recommend it. I would honestly recommend these four films before I really recommend these films. I guess you could even say I would recommend these two films too, but these are for more like if you like Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man or if you like Tom Holland's Spider-Man. But these three movies, I just don't really recommend because they're just not great. But yeah, that is my tier list of the Spider-Man films. That's how I would rank them. Did you like this tier list? Or did you just like the video? Well, hit the like button and actually in the comments leave like how you would rank the Spider-Man movies. Like how would you rank them? And also give me suggestions on what you want me to do next Thursday for a tier list because I always like to hearing your guys' suggestions. And otherwise, leave a like, leave a comment, and also, subscribe to the channel, trying to hit 150. So if you have not subscribed yet, please go ahead and do so. But otherwise, guys, yeah, that about does it. Thank you guys for watching. I always appreciate you guys. This is the Austinator signing out. See you later, guys. And then I'm just gonna do the outro.
I don't know. I never thought I'd get this far.
Your Highness, I'm sure it's not that noticeable.